Okay, and then I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Hang on. It's not going to let me do that. Hang on. There we go. Okay, can you guys see that?
No.
No. Okay. Back up. Start over again. Share screen. Da, 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 da. Okay, hang on. I got to shrink it down a little bit. Okay. We'll try this one more time here. Okay, can you guys see my video?
No.
Oh, what the heck?
No.
No. Okay, hang on. We'll try this. Screen one.
It worked.
There. Now can you see it?
Yep.
All right. Okay.
We're going to be teaching you a little bit about poultry.
So my name is Morgan Nagus. I'm a senior in high school this year. I was able to compete at state for the Poultry CDE contest, and I was able to take 4th individually.
And my name is Braden Nagus, and I was able to place first high individual at the state poultry level for FFA in 2018. We were also able to compete nationally in 2018 as well, and that was super awesome and super fun. So anyway, there's some good opportunities in poultry. So.
Yeah, so we were able to compete in Indianapolis and kind of learn about, we were able to take our understanding and our knowledge of poultry and be able to compete with live hens, carcasses, yeah, just a lot of different things.
Anyway, so today the first thing that we wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about is egg layers. So obviously there's many different categories in chickens. You have your breeds that are for looks, like for instance like bannies or other just like pretty chickens, I guess, or ducks or turkeys or whatever you prefer. But we're going to be specifically talking about egg layers today. So for instance, like the average life expectancy of an egg-laying chicken is usually about 5 to 10 years. But now that doesn't mean that they will lay the whole 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. So normally of those 5 to 10 years that that chicken is living, approximately 2 to 3 of those they're going to be laying.
Yeah, and after that, you'll still get an occasional egg here or there, but usually at that point they're just not worth keeping anymore because the amount you put into them isn't worth what you get out of them. So that's why a lot of times when you talk to people, you'll find out that they rotate their chickens every few years is to keep their egg production up. So a lot of times when you see chickens for sale and they're older hens, that's usually what they've done is that a farmer has rotated them out so they can keep young chicks or young chickens so that they can have
Regular production.
Yes, exactly. So another thing that you guys will want to think about is as you have your egg-laying chickens, when they're reaching that year and a half mark, then you probably ought to start getting some other chicks ready. That way you don't ever have a time frame where you don't have eggs. So usually, about that year and a half mark, you can start raising some more chicks to replace your hens, and so you can keep up on your egg production. Yep. Anyway, the other thing to expect when you're talking about those chickens, and like I just said, that it takes, usually they'll lay for about 2 years, is the first 1 to 4 months, they're usually not going to be laying any eggs whatsoever. I mean, you might have certain breeds will lay before others. I know Leghorns usually lay pretty early, usually around that 4-month mark. But you get into some of your other breeds, like your heavier set breeds, your like for instance like your White Rocks, your Silver Lace Wyandottes, Gold Lace Wyandottes, those heavier set breeds usually are laying later on in life. Anyway, usually they'll start laying around the 4 to 6 month mark.
And during that 1 to 4 month mark, you're gonna have a different kind of feed than when they're older. So like from the first 1 to 4 months that they in their lifetime, then they're gonna be having just scratch. You're just gonna be feeding them scratch so they can grow properly and everything. And then after they reach the 4 month mark, from 4 months to 2 years, like while they're laying, you're gonna mix your laying mesh with the scratch so that they're able to have that feed that's going to help them lay better, and that they're going to still be able to grow. And then after that, when they're finished laying, then you can just go back to feeding them scratch so that they're not having to incorporate that laying mesh into their feeding.
Right, and the reason why you want to feed them, you don't want to feed them a ton of mash if you can help it, is because it's quite a bit more expensive than scratch. Another thing that you can do if you're trying to save money is you can, in the wintertime, cracked corn works really well instead of scratch. It doesn't provide as much nutrition, but as long as you're feeding your laying mash, you're usually okay. But what that cracked corn does is it helps keep them warm in the wintertime. I know out there in Rich County it gets pretty cold, so that's a great way to cut costs, but also to help your hens stay warm in the wintertime. But you don't want to do this in the summer because it creates too much heat, the corn does. And so if you're trying to feed it in the summer, you'll see that your hens will have they won't eat it as much. It's not as palatable as like scratch is. Another thing too that you'll want to do when you're feeding them that scratch and that first, from their day old until they're, 6 months or 4 to 6 months, you're wanting to feed them that scratch, but also you'll want to make sure that you start them out on chick starter. Chick starter is really important to start them out on because it just really helps jumpstart them. I like to find something that's a little higher in protein, and it seems to really help them grow. Like the 24% I think is about usually what I get if you can help it. Anyway, that makes a big difference. But then once you hit that 4 to 6 month mark, that's when you'll want to start incorporating that laying mash in. And usually what I've done in the past, and Morgan as well, is that we usually do like 2 bags of scratch to every 1 bag of laying mash. Now that's just the ratio that's worked well for me. That's not saying that it will for you guys. So, I mean, I challenge you guys to try a couple different things, maybe try just feeding them straight mash and see how your egg production does. Maybe try, feeding them 4 bags of scratch to every 1 bag of laying mash. It's up to you guys, but the other important thing with feed is you always want to make sure you keep it dry and out of the weather. I know Morgan's experienced this before, and so have I, is when you go out to feed them and you've left the lid off of whatever container you're using to store, and it gets very clumpy. And
especially in like the wintertime with the snow, you never know when it's going to snow.
Yes, and it will mold, and anyway, it's really not that great for your chickens, and they won't want to eat it as much. Especially laying mash gets moldy really easily.
So going back to what Brandon was saying about how we do the 2 bags of scratch to the 1 bag of laying mesh, we when he says that we're doing that, it's not like we just do like a scoop of 2 scoops of the scratch and then a scoop of the laying mash. It's usually we get this big kind of barrel, this bucket, and then we dump all 3 bags in, and then we kind of mix it up with our hands. So that way, when they're eating, they're getting a variety of it. They're not just picking out what they like. It's just kind of they're eating all of that together. So.
Yeah. Anyway, what we mix it in is we actually have a big 50-gallon drum. Make sure you get food grade, so that way you don't hurt your chickens, with harmful chemicals that could have been in the barrel before. But you find a food grade barrel. I believe ours used to have grape juice in it. That's what it was used for, to store. Anyway, and so that's what we've used, and it's worked great. It has a lid that latches down on the top, but what we do is we'll dump a little bit of scratch in and then a little bit of laying mash, and then you start it around, and then a little bit of scratch, a little bit of laying mash, and then anyway, and you can fill it up. But it works really well, and that way you also don't have to worry about it getting wet because it's food grade, so it has a nice seal to it, and you just put the lid on and then clamp it down. And anyway, that's a great option as far as storage for feed. Another one is, of course, a shed, but the main thing is you just want to keep it dry. The other issue with feed is mice. You want to make sure that you keep it somewhere out of the reach of mice. So even if you keep it in a shed, you want to make sure that you keep it in something solid so the mice can't break into the bag.
Like Braden was saying, you want to make sure that it's sealed, no matter what container you're using, no matter where you're going to keep that food. You want to make sure it's sealed so that not just mice, but other kind of critters and bugs and everything, and even bacteria can get in. You don't want that to get into that food because then it's going to affect the chickens and it's going to affect how they lay and all those things that go into it. So going back to laying, a lot of the times the struggle with finding a good laying hen, you don't really know what you're looking for, right? Especially when they're chicks, you can't really pick and choose which ones you want as chicks because you're not going to be able to tell. So so we have this little diagram here with parts of the chicken. Let me get up close. So a lot of these things you're not going to really need to know, I guess, when it comes to seeing if your hen's going to be a good layer. So like the shoulder and the breast, you're not going to really be focusing on because those are more of meat chicken type qualities and not laying hens. But you can see here that it says the comb, and then it says the eye ring and the earlobe, and then it says the toes. So we like to call it in the shanks. And then the pubic bones and the keel bones. And you probably are thinking, like, why in the world does that have to matter? Why does that matter with laying hens and how to find if they're a good laying hen or not? But so right here, when it talks about the keel bone and the pelvic bones, or the pubic bones, you're able to tell, you can feel with your fingers, it kind of sounds gross, but you can feel the distance between those bones to be able to measure their abdominal capacity. So that's just kind of telling like how big the chicken is inside and if they're going to be able to store good eggs or those kind of things. So when we are looking for good laying hens, you have to kind of you can't be afraid to get down and in there. You just gotta, you measure that distance, and the bigger the better. So a really good laying hen is going to have like a 3x4, so like 3 distance between the pubic bones and a 4 distance between the pubic and the keel bones.
And what you'll do is, you can kind of see it on this diagram a little better, but you can see where the keel bone is and where the pubic bone is. You'll actually stick your finger in between the two pubic bones there, and that's that first measurement that Morgan was just talking about. You stick your fingers through that, and that's what she was saying, could be a 3. And then what you'll do is measure from the bottom of the pubic bones to the top of the keel bone and the keel bone, and you can feel it if you put your fingers like this, and you'll place them in there. Anyway, and you can tell that way. Morgan will also talk to you a little bit about the pigmentation that you're looking for in the eye rings and in the shanks.
So going back to what we were talking about, the abdominal capacity, how you measure that. So like Braden was saying, there's the 2 pubic bones, and you're going to measure like this, like with your fingers, you're going to go vertically. So sometimes it's like a smaller one, so it's going to be like a 1 or a 2, and sometimes we even get a 3, and sometimes even we get to a 4. And then, so once you measure the distance between the 2 pubic bones, then you're going to measure the distance, like Braden was saying, between the pubic bone and then the top of the keel bone. So then you're going to go horizontally. So like for example, like we said, like it'd be like a 3 between the pubic bones and then a 4 between the pubic and the keel bones. And so that's kind of how you're able to tell the abdominal capacity and how, and that's kind of the main thing you look at when you're looking at a laying hen, to be able to see if they're going to be a good layer. So back to what Braden was saying about the pigmentation. So I'm sure you guys all know like what the wattles are. So and the comb. So back to this diagram with the wattles right here and then the comb right here. Those are on the chicken, those things are reds. I'm sure you guys all know that. But so what you're going to look at, you want to look at the comb and the wattles. And the darker the pigmentation they are, so the more red they are, then the better of a layer they're going to be. And then you're also going to look at the earlobes right up here, as well as the shanks, the feet, as we were talking about. And you want those to be really bleached, so you want them to be more white. And then also what we kind of look at sometimes, it's kind of funny to look at, but when you look at their shanks, so their feet, you want them to be kind of more worn down. And then another thing that we look at is we look at the plumage and the feathers. So you want them to kind of be a little bit more worn. Yeah, you want them to be more worn. You don't want them to look like perfectly intact, because if they're a little bit more worn, then that means that the hen is going to be putting more nutrients into its egg than its own actual body, and they're not going to be worried as much about their feathers as they are about their eggs. So that's kind of a good sign to look for. And then, yeah, like what I was saying, you kind of just look at the pigmentation and the bleaching in those areas, and you're able to kind of see if that hen's going to be a good layer or not.
Yeah, another big thing that you talk about is the vent. And the vent you can see here, it's right down there, is the vent. Anyway, the vent is where the chicken lays its eggs, and it's also where the chicken excretes. So it's where it poops out of it. Anyway, that's the same organ does all of it on a chicken.
So that's why when you get like the eggs, sometimes they have a little bit of poop on them. Sometimes it's because they come out of the same place.
Yes, exactly. And that also could be called the cloaca. That is kind of just like the slang term for cloaca. Anyway, that is also the chicken's reproductive organ. So when a chicken breeds, that's where the sperm actually enters inside the chicken. But anyway, one thing about the vent is you want to make sure that the vent is moist. A chicken that lays good will have a moist vent, and you can see that, but most importantly, you can feel that. The other thing you want to look for is good bleaching in the vent. You want it to be kind of whitened out. If it's really red or anything like that, it can indicate that the chicken has either not yet been laying or has not been laying for a certain period of time. So that's one thing you want to look for. Another thing too with laying hens that we'll talk about while we have you guys is different breeds depending on the climate. So personally, here in Roosevelt, you guys didn't know.
Still in Utah.
Yes, still in Utah. It actually has pretty one thing that I've found that really helps is in the winters is to have a heavy.
You have to do asteroids.
Chicken has more fat to keep it warm, and they actually went to white leg.
Oh, you have one right here? I know. I have to do it too. No, I got it.
Okay, sorry guys. We needed to mute. Okay, let me go back. We'll back up just a little bit so you can hear.
But anyway, one thing about the vent is you want to make sure that the vent is moist. A chicken that lays good will have a moist vent, and you can see that, but most importantly, you can feel that. The other thing you want to look for is good bleaching in the vent. You want it to be kind of whitened out. If it's really red or anything like that, it can indicate that the chicken has either not yet been laying or has not been laying for a certain period of time. So that's one thing you want to look for. Another thing too with laying hens that we'll talk about while we have you guys is different breeds depending on your climate. So personally, here in Roosevelt, which is in Duchesne County, if you guys didn't know.
Still in Utah.
Yes, still in Utah. It actually has pretty similar weather to you guys up there in Rich County. Maybe a little less snow, but actually a lot of times colder temperatures depending on where you guys live in Rich County. But one thing that I've found that really helps is in the winters is to have a heavier set breed. A heavier set breed of chicken has more fat to keep them warm, and they actually winter much better. Like a white leghorn, for instance, is pretty skinny, and those chickens are really great in the summertime. So I like to have some white leghorns, or I'm trying to think of some other ones off the top of my head that would be great in the summertime. Some
Rhode Island Reds.
Well, they're a little more heavier set. They're a pretty good hybrid of both. But like Rhode Island Reds, white leghorns, brown leghorns are great. Anyway, just in some of your like silver spangled Hamburgs do great in the summertime. Anyway, but those heavier set breeds, you know, like you start getting into, and like Morgan said, there's the hybrids, of course. Like Rhode Island Reds are a pretty good hybrid of the two. Golden Sex-Links, Red Sex-Links, those are all pretty good. Not quite super heavy, but then you get into like your Wyandottes or your Cochins or anything like that, and they're a heavier set breed, and they usually do pretty well in the winter. So I like to have a good mixture of both in my flock. I like to have some chickens that will lay great in the summer, but also great in the winter, and then also those hybrids to kind of carry you in between. Anyway, and that makes a big difference. Another thing too, when you're talking about the production of eggs, is that's important in the wintertime. More than heat, a lot of people think that if you put heat in your coop, it'll make a big difference, which don't get me wrong, it'll help, but more than anything is light. chickens need light to lay. That will that spark their system to lay. Naturally, a chicken isn't supposed to lay in the wintertime. So if you have that light, you can fool them into thinking it's a different time of year, and that will help with your egg production all through the year. Also, a lot of times people ask the question, can chickens lay more than one egg a day? And the answer is?
Not usually. So it usually takes about 22 to 26 hours to form an egg. So I guess if you were really lucky, you could have one really early, like right around midnight, and then like right around close to midnight, or I guess like 11:30 that same night, because that's going to be around 22 hours. But usually it's about once a day, same time usually. So yeah, so don't really get under. It's not really common for a chicken to lay 2 eggs a day, but it can happen, like I said, if it's really early in the morning and then really, really late at night. So
yeah, which is obviously not very common because chickens roost at night, as you guys know. But one thing that I will say that you guys will probably notice is that in the summertime when it's warmer, you'll notice that your eggs and the days are longer. Of course, your eggs will be laid early in the morning. When it's wintertime, they're usually laid later in the day. So that's one thing that you guys will notice as well. But anyway,
I think going back, like kind of recapping, one thing about poultry is that you just have to be afraid to, you don't want to be afraid to just handle them. Like, just get in there. Like we said, like being able to tell if they're going to be good layers. You could tell when we go to our competitions that the people that really know what they're doing are the ones that are picking up the chickens and grabbing them. Like, because how in the world are you going to know if the vent is moist if you don't get in there and look or feel? And then the same thing with like it's abdominal capacity, like we said, like the 2x4. You obviously can't just look at those things. So you just have to be fully into it. You don't be afraid to just get the chicken, just grab it, and to be able to just examine it. And yeah. So.
Anyway, other than that, we were glad to provide you guys with a little bit of information. We hope to help, and we hope you guys continue your passion with poultry, and we hope that you can be successful in it. So.
And if you guys have any more questions, feel free to reach out to your instructor, and they'll be able to get back to us. So. Yep.
Anyway, thanks so much, guys. We'll
see
you
you later.
Okay, so that was fun. Braden, thank you so much to you and Morgan for making that video and sharing that with us tonight. We'll take a few minutes now, and do any of you have any questions for Braden about anything that you heard in the video?
Yes, Braden, what is a vent?
A vent is the cloaca, so that's where the egg comes out and the chicken poops out of. And anyway, it's the cloaca. It's that. Anyway, it's the chicken's bum hole. So anyway, but a chicken, that's where the egg comes out, and that's also where they use the bathroom. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions you guys maybe have? Okay, we can't think of any yet, but we may still get some. It looked like Kathy's on tonight too, so we're excited that Kathy maybe got on with us tonight. Did you have any questions for Kathy? Any follow-up questions from anything that you learned over the past couple of weeks?
Hey, Brandy.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We're just going through the canyon. I'm in the car. We're going through the canyon, but if anybody has any questions on the poultry show taking place this weekend, they can get on our website, which is utahfancypoultry.com. There's a kind of a itinerary on there that shows what time the events are. And there's also the Facebook page, Utah Fancy Poultry Facebook page that they can go to and get information on there. We're excited. We're going to have a fun show. There's going to be over 500 birds entered. So I look forward to see anybody who comes. And does anybody have any questions on it?
So Kathy, just to clarify, Saturday is really the better day to come. Did we lose you?
I'm still here. Are you still there?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you now. So Saturday is the better day to come because they can actually walk among the birds and look at the birds a little closer. Is that correct?
They can, and they can see who the judges picked as the show champions. There's also the junior showmanship that will be taking place that day, and it's a better opportunity to talk to me or any of the other breeders that are there.
Okay. And what time do they open the doors on Saturday?
Saturday, I think 8:30 in the morning is when they open the doors. The silent auction starts at 9. And then the junior showmanship, if they want to see how that works, starts at 11. And the show will close at 2 o'clock. So I highly recommend coming before 2 o'clock. Otherwise, there won't be anything to see. So before 2, between 8:30 and 2 is a good time to come.
Okay. Between
All right.
8:30 and 2. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yep. Okay, we're going to be heading through the canyon, so I'm going to lose you. So thank you for giving me a minute.
Okay, thanks, Kathy.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so don't forget to put that on your calendars this week if you are up in northern Utah and would like to come to that. I shared the picture of it a moment ago. It's going to be at the Golden Spike Fairgrounds, at the Weber Fairgrounds. They're at Golden Spike Arena. They're in the exhibit hall. So be sure and go check that out. Braden, can you maybe share a little bit of some ideas maybe with these kids that have never shown a chicken? Maybe what it's like to actually show a chicken and what that would entail?
Yeah, so I can a little bit. I mainly focused on laying hens more than the showmanship side of things. But one thing that you always want to look for in a good show bird is you want to look for a bird that holds himself well. You don't want a bird that's just going to sit in the corner quietly. You want one that's going to stand up and it's going to kind of strut its stuff. Most people prefer to show roosters, and a really good breed for that I've personally really like to do is the silver Seabrights. They're a bantam, but anyway, they're a good little breed, and they have a good little attitude, and they strut their stuff pretty well. But like I said, I haven't done a whole lot of showing, but I know a lot of people really like to show those bantams. They're a good breed for that. So
Thank you.
Yep.
So do we have anyone else that is on tonight that has shown chickens?
So Grant wants Braden to repeat the breeds that he recommended for the Rich County area. Our connection kind of cut out. So would you mind repeating those?
Yeah, no problem. Are you talking for laying hens or for showing?
Laying.
Okay, so your best breeds are going to be like your heavier set breeds. So for instance, like your sex links, your golden sex links, your red sex links, Wyandottes, like silver lace Wyandottes are really good. Golden lace Wyandottes. Anything that's just a heavier set breed. Usually, like if you're going to IFA or Cow Ranch or Tractor Supply or wherever you get your chick supplier, that you'll see that there's usually on the little tubs or whatever that they're in. Usually, there's a little card that says a little bit about the chicks. Anyway, and a lot of them will say they're a bigger breed or they're a mid-sized breed. If you're looking for one that will lay good in the winter, then you obviously want to go your heavier sets. Like I said, those breeds I named off. But it's also good to have some that are a little bit lighter weight too, like which are your brown leghorns or your silver spangled Hamburgs or brown or white leghorns or anyway, and then just like some of your mid breeds. Like a lot of people really like Americanas because they lay colorful eggs or Easter eggers or cream leg bars, and or anyway, any of those are. So they're all really good. The main thing is get some lightweights, but also get some heavier set breeds too. That way, I know for you guys, you have long, wet, cold winters. So for that reason, I definitely go the mid-sized birds to the heavier set birds for sure. Cochins are another good heavy set bird. So
Thank you.
I don't think we have them on tonight, but we have had several kids from Washington County participating. So they're obviously the opposite end of the state and a lot warmer. So does that, if the cold country should have the heavy set, does that mean that the hot country should have a little bit, something that isn't a heavy set bird?
So typically like the lighter weight birds, like the leghorns, they tend to lay a little better. That's why if you go to a store, all the eggs that as long, and if you don't buy organic eggs or anything, they'll always be white. And that's because white leghorns are your best egg layers. I mean, as far as like a controlled environment, if that makes sense. So if you're looking for straight egg production and the weather is good, then you can't beat a white leghorn. They're really good egg layers as far as that goes. But like I said, any of those lighter breeds, but you'd still be just fine with a heavier set breed if you want them. They're just not known for as good of production, but still like your Rhode Island Reds, they're a little bit, they're not quite as heavy as like the Cochins or Buff Orpingtons, but they're a good breed for that. And mainly just any of those lightweight ones, they do really well. So they're your best egg layers usually, but still, if you're going to go for some mid-range birds, the sex links are super good egg layers. The Rhode Island Reds are great. And anyway, those are some of my favorites.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, we had a comment in the chat, a Seabright. Have you heard of a Seabright?
Yeah, those are those bantams that I was talking about, silver Seabrights or golden Seabrights. They're a pretty common breed used for that. But there's lots. I mean, you can show any type of chicken. Or really any poultry. It's just whatever you prefer. But I just know a lot of people really like to use those Seabrights.
Excellent. Okay. So we'll do last call for any other questions. I don't see anything in the chat. Okay. So as for some other housekeeping, so this was supposed to be our last meeting, but and we're hoping to have the turkey show people here to talk about the state turkey show and about how to get turkeys. But they had a conflict tonight, so will not be able to be on, but they can join us next Wednesday. So not in 2 Wednesdays, but next Wednesday on the 17th. So we want to invite everyone to come back next Wednesday, the same link. I'll send out another reminder on email the day of the class, and we'll do a class 6. And that one will be focused completely on raising turkeys, how to purchase turkeys through the state 4-H and FFA program, and then the state turkey show that is held in November and what that entails. Raising turkeys is a lot of fun. And I know I've been talking with a lot of you up here in Rich County. I think we haven't had any turkeys raised for 4-H kids up here. And I think they would do really well. The wild turkeys do really well. So we will, I think if you guys can come back next Wednesday, we will have that last class and then we'll be done with our series. This has been a lot of fun and we really appreciate all of you that have joined us. Question in the chat. Did you need us to sign in for a role? Actually, no, I've kind of taken a role, so I think we're okay with that tonight. Just If you are in a different county, if you may need to let your leaders know that you participated tonight so they can count it as a meeting for you. Oh, any other discussion about meat chickens? I don't have any other guests on the line. Braden, do you have anything you want to add about the meat chickens?
Yeah, I could touch on the subject a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So your meat chickens, at least through the FFA program. So first of all, let me clarify with the laying hens. So if you're judging through FFA, and you're judging egg layers, you will only judge white leghorns. That's what they have. So they're all the same. And if you're going to judge meat chickens, which it's the same program, but here in Utah at the state level, they don't actually have you judge meat chickens. But when you go to nationals, they introduce you to them there. So it's actually something I'd like to see Utah get into more, so it prepares us better nationally. But because when we went, we were kind of a little bit in the dark. But since then, I've done a little bit of research, and I've actually raised some of my own. The meat chickens that they use for judging as well as for growing are usually Cornish rocks. They're a white breed, and they're actually a hybrid, so they're sterile. And these chickens, they're made to grow super fast. So if you're trying to grow them on your own, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to, the first few days you can leave the food in front of them at all times, but after that you'll want to take it away every 12 hours. So 12 hours on, 12 hours off. Otherwise what will happen is the chickens will actually eat too much and they'll go into cardiac arrest. They'll have a heart attack because they are just bred to eat and eat and eat. The other thing is you're going to want to butcher them about 8 to 12 weeks. That's when they'll be the best to eat. And that is also, if you raise them past that, usually what happens is they actually get too big for their bodies and their legs will break. And just because, like I said, they're just made to gain weight, but you always want to make sure you're switching back. You really got to get good at doing the 12 hours on, 12 hours off. That's the key as far as the meat chickens. When you are getting ready to butcher them, obviously you just want to make sure that you're not going to butcher a sick one or anything like that. Just make sure they're all good and healthy. Always keep water in front of them. They're a real messy bird. They stink really bad. So I wouldn't recommend raising them next to your house. If there's any more questions, I can hit on those too. But usually when you're judging them, there's a few things you look for, but usually, you just want a good heavy bird. You don't want anything lean, obviously. So yeah, I can answer any more questions if there's any. What does that comment say? Sorry, I missed it.
It says if they've read that a Cornish cross chickens don't do well above 5,000 feet in elevation. Do you have a recommendation for an alternate breed for a high altitude?
I don't. I live about above 5,000 feet in elevation, and mine did okay. The reason they say this though is because they get so big so fast that they have a hard time catching their breath because they're so big and their organs are so small. I think that as long as they raise them without putting a lot of pressure on them, I actually think that they do okay. But yeah, they have weak hearts, and so therefore they have weak lungs, and that's the reasoning behind that. But I think it's really hard because that is the main breed as far as meat chickens go. I mean, there's some other bigger breeds, but as far as, it's really hard to compete with those. But I think what you would see is that if you butcher them around the 8-week mark, I don't foresee a problem, only because they won't be quite as big. So that's probably what I would do personally. I would still go for it, and just try to really keep the pressure off of them. I mean, if you have dogs, make sure they're not around them chasing them. Just keep the pressure on or off of them. Make sure that they can't hurt themselves. Like fly down off. If your roost is too high, they can't fly very well. They usually will actually just sleep on the ground because they can't roost. But just do your best to give them an easy life. Keep the food and water close by, and I think that they would be fine.
Okay, thank you. Where is your favorite place to purchase chicks?
Oh, go ahead.
I on both meat and layers.
Gotcha. So I personally, I use all of them. I use IFA. I use Tractor. Are you talking about your local retail stores, or are you talking about like hatcheries?
Either. Just if we've got kids that are interested in just starting fresh, are they better off just to go to IFA or you know, one of the local feed stores, or is there a mail order that is a good way to go, or you know, buying off of Facebook? You know, some people
Yeah,
are selling that chicks that are already hatched. What
right.
are some of your thoughts?
So my first thought is if they're off Facebook, they're probably going to be straight run. So which means you're probably going to have roosters and hens. Which if you haven't if you have a plan for the roosters, that's not a problem. I know here there's a sales barn that if you take your roosters down there when they're grown, they'll give you $5 a rooster, and people will butcher them and eat them. But not every place has that, and so that's one thing I would just be careful of, is make sure that if you want hens, make sure you're looking in the pullets and you're not looking at straight run. As far as which is better, as far as the mail order or the ordering them from a feed store, if you're ordering them in bulk, so when I was for my SAE, which is my supervised agricultural experience in FFA, I raised 200 chicks, and I raised them from day olds to 8 weeks old. And so basically, as soon as they were out from underneath the heat lamp, I sold them. That way people didn't have to raise them under the heat lamps. And so I made a little money doing that. And that's something that if anybody decided to do, I'd be happy to reach out to you. Jennifer is my aunt, and she could provide you guys with my contact information. But anyway, I think that overall, if you order them through the mail, expect a few to be dead. That's just the way it is. You know, they'll die in the shipping process. But if you're ordering bulk, then I'd probably go through the mail. That way, you know what you're getting. But if you're just doing a backyard, backyard little project, and you just have a few chickens in a coop, then I really like to go to I usually check all of the feed stores, but I really like Cow Ranch and IFA the best. They're probably my two favorites for both meat and laying hens. So, and they have a good assortment of, your prettier breeds like your Bannies and your Silkies and Polish and all those. So.
Thank you. Okay, we did have a question in the chat about the meat chickens, about when do you take the food away and start doing the 12 on, 12 off?
You'll have to do some research for your exact dates, but I believe it's after 3 days. But I'm not 100% sure. So that's one thing that you do want to be careful of if you buy them from a feed store, is make sure that they're younger chicks, which is easy to tell because you look and see if they started to grow in their feathers. They'll grow those primary feathers on their wings very first. And as long as they don't have those, you'll be okay. And it doesn't have to be exact. It could actually be after a week or two. I'm not sure. You guys will have to do your own research on that just because I can't remember. But the most important thing is, just like I said, just make sure it's 12 hours on, 12 hours off. So, and they'll also recommend that first little while that you're feeding them, to feed them a chick starter with higher protein. And then after that, you can feed them a chick grower with a little bit less protein, because you don't want them to grow too fast that they, like I said, they have a heart attack or their legs break.
Okay. Okay, a few questions keep coming in here. Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any in the chat. So if that's the case, then we will probably call it good for tonight. Just be sure and join us again next week. So not in 2 weeks, but next week on Wednesday. And we will use the same link that we've been using, and we'll talk about the turkeys. So if you don't have any other questions, Braden, thanks so much for joining us. Let's see, I don't see that Kathy is back on. We lost her, so we're grateful for Kathy and the previous classes that she's done for us and all of the information. And we got to give a shout out to Dom Nagus, because his interest in all of this is kind of what sent us down this little rabbit hole, or chicken run, maybe is the better way to say it. So thanks, Dom, for having an interest and getting us all excited about all of this chicken and poultry stuff. We appreciate it. So, okay, it was fun to see everyone on tonight. We're going to end just a little bit early, and we'll see you all here next week. So tell your friends. This class will go up on the YouTube channel. I shared that link in the email. If you want to go back and watch any of the previous classes, you should be able to do that on the YouTube channel. So, okay, good night. Thank you.
Thank you.